4 years ago, I was on the verge of a complete breakdown due to burnout from work, and I thought daily about quitting my job, moving to the countryside, and building a commune with my sisters. And don't get me wrong, that is still the dream, but I decided that instead of waiting for that eventual reality, I was just gonna build a little slice of heaven right where I am. Starting with these 2 cherry trees that are just about ready to be picked. I have the branch supported here because it's got so many cherries on it that I'm worried that it's gonna break. This one is a black cherry, and then this one over here is a white cherry. And for the services of eating bugs and letting me know when these cherries are ripe, I am sharing with some of the songbirds in my area. The next thing in this space is a service berry, which is a native berry plant in my region. They're also known as June berries, I believe, or Saskatoon. And although they are not as sweet as blueberries, I've heard that they are a really good substitute. Next, I have my mini nectarine trees. This is about the full size that it's supposed to get, and these 2 are actually the same age. And I'm not sure why this one is so much smaller other than it struggled in its first year. But between these 2 trees, I get so many nectarines that I'm not even sure what to do with them in the summer. The last fruit producing tree I have in this area is this Sweetheart Apricot. And what's unique about this is that it produces fruit and a nut all in one crop. The apricot kernel, unlike most apricot kernels, is safe to eat. They've had it tested, and it is basically just like an almond. And right next to this apricot, I have a pink currant. It's not ripe yet, but when it is ripe, they are just the cutest little pink berries, and they're super tart, but really good. This little guy that unfortunately looks pretty rough around the edges is a pawpaw tree. I'm probably at least 6 or 7 years away from getting fruit from this tree, and unfortunately, its pollinating partner died. But one of my favorite facts about this plant is that it actually evolved before bumblebees. So the flowers have kind of a rotten smell to them, and that was to attract flies and beetles. In this area, my original plan was to have a blueberry and lingonberry hedge. And these plants are doing okay, but my soil is not naturally acidic, so I have to kind of work at making this a place that blueberries want to be. This area also gets the absolute brunt of our worst heat of the day, and these plants really are more understory plants, and so I wish that I would have planted some trees here instead and then planted the blueberries beneath them. So unfortunately, I really haven't gotten much of a harvest out of this space. What I have been able to harvest a ton of, though, are raspberries. In fact, these are so vigorous and so productive that I regularly have to kind of come through and thin them. And these are ever-bearing, so basically every day in the summer I'm able to have some Greek yogurt with raspberries on it, and I count myself very lucky for that. This also provides just a little bit of privacy for my garden from the Airbnb right there. Not technically a fruit, but I do have some rhubarb here, which I'm excited to make some fun strawberry rhubarb stuff with. For this area, my goal was to create a little bit more of a food forest slash landscaping kind of situation where I have edible and non-edible plants all mixed together. Starting with this American elderberry, which is a lot bigger than I was expecting and has taken over where some of my irises were planned to be. So in the fall, I'm gonna move the irises because I think this elderberry is here to stay now. Right next to it, I have this dwarf apple tree, and then right behind that, I have its pollinizing partner. In this area, in terms of edible plants, I have a hazelnut. There's another hazelnut down at the end because these also need pollinizing partners. And in the kind of understory of this area, I've got honeyberries in several places. The name might be a little misleading for honeyberries because they are not that sweet, but they ripen about a full month before blueberries do, and I think they are a lot easier to grow. And moving through here, we have another white currant. What's nice about the white and pink currants is that they are a little bit less tart and birds really don't bother them at all. The only downside really is that the color isn't that great when you want to make a jam or something like that. And right beneath this is kind of unique. This is a wintergreen. It's this really beautiful low-growing ground cover that produces these berries that basically are like nature's breath mints. And back here is one of the plants I will probably be waiting for the longest to see any fruit from, and that is a huckleberry. These ones definitely don't like full sun, and it's growing, but slowly, so we'll see if I even ever get any fruit out of it. I do think they're pretty though, so I'm glad to have it. And over here, it's a little more of the same. There's a hazelnut, a white currant, and then a lingonberry down there. The other thing you see popping up here is Myoga ginger. It's a flowering type of Japanese ginger, and it's just getting started, but later in the year this will be super full and beautiful. And that brings me to the last tree that we have here, which is a black peach. It ripens way late in the season, almost in October, and produces a really lovely red fleshed peach. And that brings us to the backyard. I just put a lot of this stuff in last year, so I haven't seen a lot of fruit, but I thought I'd walk you through it anyways. I have a mix of June-bearing and ever-bearing strawberries, which I love because I get one big crop in June, and then I also just get to snack throughout the year. On both sides of this arbor, I have grapes, and I'm hoping that they eventually fill in and shade this area. This is also strategically set up so that excess water from these garden towers goes to these grapes. Up until last year, there was no house behind this fence, and the fence itself was a lot smaller, so this is my attempt to still just get something great out of the space, even though it's not ideal. So while I can't really call this an espalier by any stretch, I am pruning them to be a little bit more 2D, and so far it seems to be working okay, but the only plant that is producing fruit this year in its second year is this pineapple quince. So from left to right, I have a European pear, a European plum, a pineapple quince, a sour cherry tree, which is the one that you really want for pies and things like that, another European plum in a different color, and finally an Asian pear. And normally an Asian pear and a European pear can't cross-pollinate just because their bloom times are so different. However, I picked two varieties that should be able to bloom at the same time. I just have to give them another year or so to see. This is a variegated calamondin, which is a little citrus, and it is a pretty productive plant for how small it is. And I don't know if it's just because I'm in Idaho and the bees don't have access to this, but the bees go crazy for these blossoms too. I thought that this Thai lime tree had died because I accidentally left it out in the cold, but it has come back and it is a little worse for the wear. No signs yet of fruit, but I do use these leaves in some of the Thai cooking, so maybe if I stop harvesting the leaves, then we might get some fruit. These blueberries are the same age and in the same exact soil, planted at the same time, but again I have one that is doing a lot better and one that is kind of struggling. But you can see the difference that acidic soil makes for blueberries. They just really thrive in this pot, even though it's a little bit small. And the last fruit tree I have back here, which is really not in the most ideal space, is this fig tree. Again with the construction and then my neighbor planting this very fast growing shade tree, this fig is just not in its happy spot. So I'm gonna try to move this early next spring. I just need to find a space. If growing your own fruit or your own food is something that you wanna do, the best advice I can give is to not wait for ideal circumstances like moving to the country. As you have hopefully seen, I've got a lot of stuff that's working well, a lot of stuff that is not working yet or maybe never going to work. But the point is really to get started so that you can learn, and in no time you're gonna be harvesting baskets full of fruit of your own.